So gentlemen, welcome to week 6 of our winter Ironman session that we are calling Relationships, the Good, the Bad, and the Possible. Today we have a beautiful opportunity with our good brother Josh Stranthan, and I've met some dear brothers, Quentin or Q.
Yes, absolutely.
Met him by Zoom, and his good friend Will. And this week we're going to specifically talk about relationships with people that don't look like us. You can kind of tell we're a little different. We have 2 white guys, 2 African-American brothers up here. And this is a reality for us. We need to get better at this. Yeah. We've come a long way, but my goodness, do we have a long way to go. And here's the thing. We're each just human beings. We're taking up the same space on this earth. And so I've invited these men to share a little bit of their story with us because they have one. But Josh, I'd love for you to just maybe introduce these brothers a little more and just to maybe share about how this got going, this conversation.
All right, yeah, thanks, Goody. So Quentin and I have known each other since we were in high school. He went to school with my older sister, and we actually went to the same high school together. And it was great. So Quentin and I have gone back and forth as far as like brotherhood, and him calling me out on things in a good way, and a loving way, and vice versa. We've known each other through thick and thin, and good times and hard times. And so God's kind of kept us together over the years. Yeah. He's had a post office career. I've been sales. I've been Chick-fil-A, all these different things. But yet, God, there's been this beautiful divine connection through us. Quentin, as you guys will hear, is quite a connector of people. Yeah. And so then we were talking recently, and he's like, I really need to meet my friend Will. And I'm like, okay, let me meet this friend Will. Like, of course, it's COVID, so you just don't meet people anymore like normal. So we got on a call, and it was like instant connection with Will. It was like instant connection. And so none of us has any more time in our lives, any more time. But there was something in us that was like, we want to do this more often. Yeah. And so I think it might have even been me. I suggested to the group, if we're going to do this, we need to do this consistently.
Wow. Yep. Good.
If we're going to talk, we need to talk consistently.
And it was Josh, by the way.
Absolutely. Okay.
This consistency looks like what? Like how?
Weekly calls.
Weekly calls.
Weekly calls.
And if it's okay for me, Josh, a real sense of vulnerability, you had mentioned that your relationship with Q is the fact that when you got divorced, your first call was to him.
Yeah.
I mean, like you guys really have shared real live things together, real deep life together.
It's like, can I jump in here?
Yeah.
Because it's amazing how Will and we got started. I was married, and I literally left my wife to go start spending time with another girl. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, I was broken in that because I couldn't live in that. And I would send a call out to Will and wanted to talk to him about what was going on, but the shame wouldn't allow me to open up.
Wow.
So Will actually chased me down. He would call me. I would ignore his phone calls.
Way to go, Will.
He would call me. I would ignore his phone calls. Wow. And then eventually, I would pick up, and slowly but surely, he kind of loved me into it. And I told him, eventually one day, probably years later, I told him, I said, man, when you would call, I would ignore your phone calls. He's like, Q, I knew that.
Yeah.
That ain't nothing new. So when you talk about me and Josh doing life together, me and Will did life together. And because Josh and I did life together, I did life together with both of these guys.
Wow.
I knew that was a common ground for men. Like, we can all do life together, no matter the social divide or the economic divide or the racial divide. Like,
that's powerful.
There is a common ground here.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Well, you want to say anything about that, Will?
I think, so in full transparency and disclosure, I did not really, I just wasn't gung-ho about meeting Josh originally, right? Back, not because it was Josh, it was more of I don't have any more time for anything else. Like I'm that important, right? And also Q wouldn't tell me why. I said, well, man, why? I mean, he's just a good guy. I was like, well, I know a lot of good guys. Can you give me more? You know? And so finally, it was like a Thursday, and I think I postponed our first meeting a bunch of different times. And I'm like, look, I'm not going to disrespect this man's time, right? And it was real things that was happening that week. Dealing with virtual learning and the kids just COVID stuff and, things of that nature. And we finally got on a call, and the Lord had checked me. And so my life's work is male discipleship, right? And specifically, my lane is with people that look like me, men that look like me, black men that look like me. And Q said, well, man, Josh is a white brother. And I was like, and then the Lord said, well, we are one by the blood. We're divided in this country, but my blood can bind you.
Wow.
And he said, if you're really going to do this work,
Yeah.
you need him.
Wow.
And so I had that kind of encounter, and we had our call, and next thing you know, we're just here.
Wow. So there's a lot of things I want to ask in a very short
Yeah.
period
Right.
of time. But so what has been the focus of this time? What do you typically get after?
Love it.
So I'll start it, but I think you should respond to this because
Okay.
of Brene Brown's quote.
Gotcha.
So one of the focus points, Goody, and I love that question, has been if we're going to do this, we got to be real. So Quentin and I knew each other, so there wasn't much sharing or realness because we had that level. But Will and I didn't.
Right.
We didn't have that bond yet. So he texted me. He's like, "Hey, I think we should share our stories.
Yeah.
I think we should get to know each other's stories."
That's interesting, Kyle.
So-
So actually really get to know somebody, knowing their story. Maybe you're not a color, you're actually a person.
Absolutely.
And to tell the whole story, I said, Josh, I got trust issues.
Yeah.
Just letting you know. But because of Q, we need, this is a God thing for me, right?
Okay.
But I kept real talk. I let him know up front. Hey man, I'm not all the way together. I got issues. I got systemic issues, but it's something special about you. Good.
So I was like, "All right, yeah, sure, I'll make some time." So I think we blocked out like an hour on a Friday sometime or
Yep.
something like that.
Yep.
And it ended up being like almost 2 hours.
Yep.
And, I think we had to do another one because we didn't have enough time.
Because the first 2 hours was all me, and then the second 2 hours was all him.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
again, none of us has any more time.
Right.
Like, we don't.
Right.
But this is something that's been growing. And now it's crazy because now we have these weekly calls.
Yeah.
And God's growing business out of this. He's growing vulnerability in our marriages about that. And then I'll pass it back to you and say, okay,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and that's I think the key word he says vulnerability, because with these two guys, they both had been vulnerable with me. I knew vulnerability was the key, and he talked about Brene Brown. That's Brene Brown. She teaches about vulnerability. Like that's a connector.
Yeah.
Is vulnerability, telling your story and being vulnerable enough to trust the person to do it.
Yeah.
But she also says boundaries. Vulnerability without boundaries is not vulnerability. So in order to build those boundaries or know how to expand those boundaries, we had to get into a relationship.
Yeah,
and so that's
good.
what we did. We got into a relationship with each other. And I knew, me, when I grew up going to school, when I graduated, I was the only black person in my graduating class.
Yeah.
Right? So I was in a predominantly white school. But my demographic, when I go home amongst my church family, or my people, I'm predominantly black.
Yeah.
But I knew that we all, once we know each other's story, we all speak the same language.
Wow.
Like we just tell each other stories,
That's
and so
good.
I knew they spoke the same language. Like I knew it, and I'm not gonna say I'm like this master and just knew it was gonna connect as well. But I knew that if they could just talk to each other,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like they talk the same like business language about their marriages, about their kids. These are men,
Yeah.
but also they're loving men because they love on me. So,
So-
it's like men, but know how to love at the same time.
So same dreams for your kids. You want your marriages to work.
Josh and I and Q, but where we really met, the Bible talks about being equally yoked, having a balance, not having one person or another that is necessarily stronger, taking that yoke, that ox, right? And having a balanced situation. He's all about legacy, right? And that is what I share. He's all about of connecting men. And he's all about that word vulnerability. At least for folks in my community, talking about black men, we don't do that well. At all.
Guilty as charged, too.
And I'm like, whoa, Josh is helping me be more vulnerable. And I even had insecurities. I'm big on Clifton Strengths. It's a strengths exercise, and my number one strength is a relator. And because that's my number one strength, in my community, if you're too nurturing as a man, well, what's wrong with you? You get a little bit too close, right? And so where now the Lord has helped me embrace my gift, and it's blessing men.
Wow.
Right? And so for me, no matter how many distractions it took to get here, I'm like, no, I got to get here. Because I know between the power that the Lord is granting us and performing through us, we're going to capture a lot of guys.
Yes.
Guys that look like us, brown, black, white, blue, whatever, that think differently. And so that is the number one thing that I think we're trying to set the tone with, is in that area of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And good, if you notice,
Yeah.
Will said, in our community we don't do vulnerability well, and then Josh said, kind of over here too. See, we speak
Right.
the same language. So
yeah.
only because I've been amongst mine, I know like the vulnerability level is not there.
Listen,
but
you-
Josh is saying, oh no, that's me too.
Yeah, yeah.
And guess what? What we notice is that's men.
Right.
Yeah.
That's men.
And it's
White, black,
and it's
green,
an assumption.
Chinese.
It's an assumption that keeps the wall up.
You're right.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So-
great. So let me really, again, how have you guys found yourselves? I mean, so often you guys are talking about a very common dynamic. One, you're talking about men. That's a gender, regardless of the color of skin. You're talking about vulnerability. That's a human thing, right? But in your conversations, to go deeper, have you guys come up against some? Have you hit some walls? Whether it's
I think I need to
as
leave now.
men or whether it's by,
I think I need to leave.
or maybe even quote the race thing came up. I don't
Right.
know. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it would be really interesting because I think we have one race, the human race.
Yeah.
Different ethnicities.
Yeah.
And all those ethnicities one day are going to be before the throne of God from every tribe and nation. But I'd love to
Come
hear
on.
you talk a little bit about that. Have you?
Yeah.
Has that surfaced at all?
Yeah, well, it's surfaced between Q and I.
Yes.
So just
Full disclosure. Go ahead.
disclosure,
Right.
I think we have a counseling session coming up with Josh. To
Yeah, we're
work
going
on
to
some.
debrief this session and then we're
you know,
going into
and
counseling.
then we want to counseling because it is, and don't lose this. Like the devil knows what's going on too, and so we are the spiritual warfare. Things that just happen don't just happen, right? And so we have some tension as friends, right? But what we're trying to do, we have, our name is called Real Men, Real Talk. If we're going to do that, then we got to live it out, like both the good and the not so good. What does the Bible say, right? If one offends another person, you go to that person.
is.
We can't work it out. Well, okay,
Yep,
bring
bring
your
it.
brother in.
There you go.
And so it is the roadmap to, even in this particular circumstance, of having conflict, because in men we got pride issues, we got know-it-all issues, we got all kinds of issues
Yeah, that's really well
internally.
stated.
You're going to have that, right? And what we do historically is whatever.
Yep. Don't
I'm
answer
good.
your phone call. I
I'm
don't answer your
good.
phone call.
I'm
Hey,
good.
I don't want to deal with it, And I'm not saying everything's got to be perfect and you got to be best friends with everybody that you meet, but you do have to have a mutual respect and a love for one another. That's required of the faith,
And you're saying regardless of color.
regardless of color.
So unfortunately, we haven't had any racial tension with our brother here, but we also know that, and we keep doing life together. Conflict is going to happen.
Sure.
In every relationship, there has to be conflict resolution.
Yeah.
So conflict is going to happen, but I just don't think we hit it just yet.
Josh also listens very well.
Woo. Yeah, he
I
does.
mean, I'm a processor out loud, so I'll be talking, and you got to just catch up with me, And I said, Josh, what do you think?
yeah.
Yeah. Like now he's got
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's just,
Yeah.
Get that pose thing going.
I heard it, and give me some time to.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
I'll get back to you.
Man, you're good. Like,
Can you tell my dad that?
like I wish I could be like that with my wife. You know what I'm saying? Like,
How about you? How do you feel like that? I mean,
It's a couple things running through my mind. We have had some interesting racial conversations just in light of our
Absolutely.
national news that is going
Yeah.
on right now.
Oh, yeah.
It's brought about a lot of
4 o'clock in the morning.
4 o'clock in the morning, good. We're having these conversations.
wow.
They're up with me at 4 o'clock in the morning.
But real quickly, say a little more about that.
So January 6th, something happened at the Capitol, and if you don't know, you must be living under a rock. But all this stuff starts stirring, and I think it was Will had potentially started the text.
Yeah.
The night before.
Right.
And I responded the next day I woke up, and I was like, this is intense, this is really good. I don't know what I all feel yet, but I know something's got to be done. And I love to talk to you guys about more. Well, it wasn't soon after that that Quentin responded back with like his 4 or 5 thoughts, and then Will's responded, and then I think we hopped on a call the next day.
Right.
And we're like, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
And you guys had used some terms
Yeah.
that I'm not familiar with. Like, and I don't know what to do with these terms when I hear them, like white supremacy.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Systemic racism.
systemic racism. Like, I've heard them, but I've not spent enough time to really understand them. And so as they're sharing them, Goody, with me on this phone call, and sometimes it's Zoom, sometimes it's just on the phone, I'm like, I really need to process what you guys are saying, because I want to know more, because for me, my words speak and my silence speaks.
Yeah.
And so I need to know what their words are saying.
Good.
From the time that they were boys to now that they're men,
Yeah.
I need to know where those words are coming from.
Right.
And so, because I could prejudge immediately.
Yeah.
I could be like, well, white supremacy, I'm a white guy. Do you think
Yeah.
I'm a white supremacist?
Right.
Like, I could go there.
And I would dare say they're probably not saying that.
Right. But I flat out asked him, I said, well, you're the white guy in the room. What do you think?
Yeah.
And to his point, he just, I'm still
and
processing
he
this.
even helped me understand that from my perspective, I'm assuming that if I say the term white supremacy, because white supremacy is more of a spiritual thing than it is a color thing. It has to do with basically the foundation of this country and more of that than it is white folks are being bad. And I think if you are ignorant to it, or if you're just having a bad day, even you're thinking if I say that, I'm lumping you in,
Right.
and now you can't hear anything I got to say.
wall.
The wall is up.
Yep.
That's
right?
correct.
Where Josh helped me understand, if I'm having a conversation, I have to explain what that term means for me,
Yes.
fully out,
Yes.
right? And now we can actually have a conversation because your lens is different.
Yes.
And that I never really fully understood that the other person could be thinking you're racist, or you automatically support this particular person or that person or whatever it is. There was a lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
So what's really good about this, and this is why I was almost selfish when Quentin asked if I meet Will, because I'm like, yeah, I love meeting men. I love this. It's great. But what you just said was so huge. If I don't understand that you have a difference
Right.
of opinion
Yeah.
or a view or a worldview,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think you automatically assume
Yeah.
you think like I think, I've already failed.
Yeah. And how many times do we bucket people that way?
Yeah.
And therefore we don't really communicate.
Yeah.
Because words do matter. Look, there are white supremacists.
Yeah, right,
That
sure.
view people. That's not every white person.
Absolutely.
There are people. If we can't say, hey, there's people that watch the news and they see African Americans burning things, and we think, well, all that. No, that's not all African Americans.
right.
But that,
And we don't condone that either.
exactly.
Right,
And so being able to have a safe place, right?
Oh, man,
Which is
yeah.
what I'm hearing
Yeah.
you all have struggled to create. So you can really say the things, because you said story, but you've
Yeah.
entered in. So let me ask you this: what were some of the things that you felt? For the time I have a couple more questions. Some of the barriers, barriers may be too strong a word, but maybe some of the things you had to push through, or are
Yeah.
pushing through now to stay in it.
Yeah. So I'll say my story has to do with some bad business dealings. And because it's a legal matter, I don't want to give all the details, but some bad legal business, by the way. And I was in a situation where I lost my business, and I was the only black man in the room, right? And so my lens, and painful lens, and probably still struggling in forgiveness, right? Because now you take, if you know anything about construction, it takes a while to get your bond, and you grow and you grow and you grow, and that was taken away, right? And so when I explained that to Josh, I said, so a lot of things, if something errs on the side of racism or unfairness, that's kind of my worldview, and that's also transferable to everybody, right?
Yes.
It's not just transferable from a black man, right, or from a Hispanic man, from an Asian man. His experiences generally are in front of what he's hearing. Right, and so, so for me, it's been I want to say not for him. It's not a battle, because Josh is very, very gifted, and love.
Yeah.
He's very gifted in patience. He's very gifted in, hey, dude, I'm here for you. I ain't judging you, right? And but I still have to push back. I have to push through to make sure I ain't putting Josh in that category.
Yeah.
So that's
well
kind
stated.
that's
Yeah,
probably the
you're kind of
barrier.
owning your own stuff in
Right.
that way. I appreciate that. Would you have anything to say about that,
I
Q?
think the only thing for me that I'm pushing through and still really trying to resolve is, like I told you, I went to a predominantly all-white school. And so I have great friendships that I've bonded with.
Yeah.
And so to see them support someone that is so divisive, it's hard for me to reconcile, like, I called you friend. Like, and I'm still waiting to have those conversations with them. but it's hard for me. I got to push through just totally annihilating them from my memory.
I see.
And really at least having a conversation to try to understand.
And what would cause you to do that is you got to go above that,
Yeah.
Right.
right?
Yep.
Like there might be somebody that let's say maybe voted for Trump or voted for Biden or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you've got to be able to go above. I'm being really candid now in this
Yes.
world, but be able to get above that to be able to, because
Yeah.
we don't have something that calls us to higher ground,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and we keep living
Yeah.
down here.
Yeah.
It's going to be crazy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I challenge folks that look like me a lot in this particular area, and I think we got to do this more. If you are a Christ follower, if you're a Christian, and those terms have been so muddy, right? You should not, your political party affiliation, whether it's Republican, Democrat, Independent, or whoever else, that should not be supreme over
Thank you.
the faith,
Yes.
right?
Say that one more time.
Your political party or affiliation should not be supreme over the faith.
Yeah.
The faith should guide you, even, and I get in trouble for all this all the time. The faith should guide you, even to take your right. You know, I don't really like any of these people.
Yeah.
You right? So I'm going to withstand in this particular round of category, whatever it is, right? And so I just think we have to get to a place where we're able to challenge our fellow brothers and sisters in the same tribe. Like when I mean the same tribe, like, you know, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whatever it is, that you know, they might not trust Josh right away, but they trust me, and vice versa. You know, hey, I'm not going to trust Will. We got to be able to challenge our folks, you know, fellow man, you know, and to forget the party.
Yeah.
Who's above all that?
Yeah.
You
One
know?
Lord, one faith,
one baptism.
And this is a challenge in this day like never before, right? Like we staying in it, somehow one person's credibility, when somebody looks like you might open the door in many ways, like Will, because of Q's friendship with Josh, it gave some credibility in this
Yeah.
way. So what is your hope
a good
with
word.
these friendships?
That's great.
Like what would be a hope that you have? Like right now, there's a ton of men watching this.
Yeah.
We have, you know, all kinds of men, different backgrounds, Asian. We have some Latino. We have African American. We got white guys for sure. And so, what's some of your hopes as we hear some of this?
You know, my hope is to see God's math come true.
God's math.
God's math. And what I mean by that is, the Bible says one can reach 1,000, two can reach 10,000, right? In our capitalistic perspective, I need to make all the money, so I'm just going to do everything by myself, right? But from a kingdom perspective, well, the three of us, I don't know what the math is. I think it's like 100,000, right? And it's not us individually impacting 100,000 people. If I go back to somebody Josh doesn't know, and Josh, I ate some fruit from him, meaning he gave me some good advice, some good wisdom, then that next brother should be able to help the next brother, right? And so it's about legacy. It's about, the perspective has to be, I'm gonna have to do with helping people that I don't know, that I'll never meet, but it's all for the glory of God.
Yeah.
So that's my hope.
That's good.
So I love this question because Will's already told me about his friend Rob. And so, like, one of my hopes is that I meet more guys. Because for me, like, what we've experienced, I want for more.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not complicated, but we complicate it every time.
Right.
Every time. So it's like, look, if you don't have an hour a week, okay, what do you have?
Yeah.
Do you have a half an hour? Like, one of the things that's so beautiful about what we do is the realness is like, hey, I can't make it work this week. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I only have a half an hour. Okay, we got a hard stop at 2:30.
Yeah.
Well, like, whatever it is.
But you're in it.
Yeah.
We talk every week, and then we text throughout the week.
That's good.
And so,
That's
like,
good.
that's what I'm hoping for, like, as people are watching this, as men are watching this, they see that, look, you're a father of two, I'm a father of five, I got a business, I got a side business.
We can tell you how to fix that, by the way.
I did already.
Okay.
And that's
I did too.
And that's a story. That's a story.
See, that's not you and That's not a skin color thing.
Yeah. And even then, there was like,
Fellowship.
we fellowship through that. I said, hey man, this is my experience, you know. And,
Yeah.
I mean,
you
I'm
know,
literally up in the weekend
Yeah.
holding the ice
Right,
pack.
right.
And Will's like, dude, how you feeling?
There will
Like,
be some women watching this.
That's
too.
great.
All right, okay, what's up?
It's a vulnerability.
Well, I mean, what would be maybe a hope that you have?
Relating that we all realize that we can really be connected by relationships. Look at this.
Yeah.
This is through relationship.
Yeah.
Josh has a relationship with you.
Yeah.
I had a relationship with Josh. Then I bring a relationship with Will. Now Will and I both have a relationship with you.
Well, it's just so beautiful because when Josh said, "Hey, we got to talk before we do this," as soon as I heard your voices, I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah.
Like it's so great because sometimes we'll say, "Well, man, I met some black guys. All these black guys are like, dude, you don't know the guys that I know that are black.
Yeah.
Like they're not like that."
Yes.
Well, all white guys like,
Right.
"Man, I got this little bald redheaded dude.
Right, 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 right.
That guy's not like that."
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's how we have to protect and,
Yeah.
and bring another voice to the conversation and the
Yeah.
table, right?
Yeah.
So help me with this. This would be when you think about encouraging people, like if somebody wanted to take a first step, or wanted to, or say, okay, look, like this is brand new territory for me,
Yeah.
or maybe I've been hurt. I got an image. Like I know my wife. I said this years ago when she was in college. She was working at a deli in Boston, and two African American guys came in about 20 minutes apart and robbed the store, one by gunpoint. Well, every other African American brother that came in there. She's out there. She goes, and this isn't right. I
Right.
know not everybody's like this,
Yeah.
but she had to quit.
Yep.
And so everybody has a coherent narrative or a story
Yeah.
that happens at an age. We have an experience, some good, some bad, some negative, and it creates a story.
Yeah.
Like part of your story. This is another deposit in your
Right.
story, right?
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
so that's true for all of us
Yeah.
watching this.
Yeah.
But what would be a step, a challenge that you would want to offer to some men? Just a word.
Yeah.
To say, hey, if you, I beg you to consider this. If you were to take a step, do this. What would it be from a brother to brother?
I'll go first.
Go.
Do it. Whatever it is that you're thinking about, do it. Like, because the Lord's going to put that thing on your heart.
What if somebody says, I don't even know anybody that doesn't look like me, really? So you would say, well, then why don't you go up and introduce yourself to somebody?
Yep. First person you see, hey, I'm Josh.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Josh. The worst thing that can happen is somebody punches you in the face. Guess what? God made you to heal.
Yeah.
The
But I-
best thing that can happen, you meet a brother like this and a brother like this, and
Yeah.
you love,
Yeah.
and you grow, and you learn.
Yeah, yeah. I'll say, and this is coming from my pastor, Keith Battle. He talks about environment, right? You know, you don't have to walk up to somebody on the street and say, "Hey, buddy, how you doing? You're a white guy. I want to, or you're a black guy." I don't suggest that. Get in an environment of the groups that you're in now, right? Challenge each other to maybe start another group, seek out some other guys, but get in an environment where this is happening, right? It's happening now. And my therapist, if you're challenged, you got the same problem I got, and it's a trust God issue. God, is this really are you really using me
That's
to do
beautiful.
this? So that is kind of
You each have a sphere of
1A, 1B.
influence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will, what would you say? I mean, Quentin, what would you say, brother?
Mine would be communication. Have the conversation. And conversating, learning how to communicate. Yelling is it's a form of communication, but it's not effective, right?
Yeah.
So communicate, learn how to communicate and understand that communication, not only are you speaking, but you're also listening. That's
Yeah.
how communication works. And so when the time comes, as my boy would say, lean into the tension, have the conversation. And then just walk away from it. And that conversation doesn't have to be about racial divide. It could be about your kids. It could
Thank
be
you.
about your.
Might even be better to start there.
I think that would
Let's
exactly
start to
relate
things that
with one another.
we have in common that we
So,
can,
Yeah.
so it's
there's
funny
some
you say that
freedom.
because the first thing Quentin tells me is, you and Will going through the same thing, virtual learning, man. You need
Yes.
to talk.
That's how.
Right.
That's
how
how
he
he
introduced
bridged.
us.
Yeah.
Right.
He's
That was
like,
the bridge.
we'll go through virtual
Yeah.
learning. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm struggling with it because
Yeah.
I'm in conference calls and there's
Yeah.
kids running around with no shirts
Yeah.
behind me.
Yeah. Don't start with the wound that's already infected.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's
Woo!
good.
You know, don't start with that. Start with something that we both.
Boy, that's
you
a
know,
big statement.
It
Don't
can
start
be.
with the wound that's
yeah.
already
Don't
infected.
start. With
How much
that.
time do we have again?
Well, here's what I will say. I can be vulnerable right now. This is really good, and it's really frustrating because we need to pull some of this to a close. And
Yeah.
I want to say this honestly. This is very life-giving to me personally.
Wow.
Because I don't want to be afraid to talk about these things. If we're serious, like we're not meeting an Ironman just to have conversation.
Right.
We said this. This isn't playing in the street. It's not playing.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing you say, in many ways, I'm getting out of the power of, like, we can even go to the same church and have people that don't look like us, but we really don't know anybody's name, or we've never really had more than a casual conversation. We don't go to the next level, talk about these human realities. So I want to thank you for sharing some of your journey with us. Like, this is, we need to have you back in a little while and say, hey, where are you now? And see if the circle gets bigger. But you all are modeling something. This is why I wanted you here, to show that it's real, that it's possible, that it's being done, that it isn't perfect, that we're not perfect, but we do have something to offer to each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that is profound.
Yeah.
And I really believe this, that much of this in our country is going to be changed from the streets up.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I think what you just said, not starting with the infection,
Yeah.
but the commonalities, that's really beautiful, Will and Quentin. Thank you both. And Josh for your vulnerability, your friendship, and what you're doing.
Goody,
Amen.
and thank you for trusting us
Yeah.
to come
Yeah,
and share.
this wasn't rehearsed. We just
Right.
did
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
One take, guys. One take. One take.
Amen. We're going to go back live now. Thank you, guys. And we're going to, just in a little bit, get you in your breakout groups so you can have a chance to download some more of this together. Thank you very, very much. We'll be back next week, Lord willing.